Good evening. Thank you for having me here. My name is Yinka Bakari. I'm a licensed therapist. Footprints, I started off, I think it was 2011, 2010, something like that. I saw there was a gap in the market where there was not many, black counsellors that were able to reach black people to talk to them, and for black people to take counselling seriously. I thought it was really something that a lot of people were missing out on. Me, myself, had gone through counselling, so I really saw the benefits of it. And it changed the way I looked at the world, so I thought it was a possibility it could change other people's lives if I was able to deliver it correctly to them. Previous to that, I grew up in Battersea, which is wasn't an easy place to grow up in, very challenging. You grew up pretty fast there, so, I wouldn't say we had gangs then, but we had something similar to gangs that developed into what we now see. So I'm familiar with what happens on the streets. Obviously, it's a lot different than what it is now, 2023. But I'm aware of what can happen on estates, and I'm aware of people that have grown up on estates now, where there's up to 10 gangs on an estate. And I'm not quite sure how children manage to survive if there's 10 gangs in an estate and you're not part of a gang. So it's not an easy thing to just say to people, don't belong to gangs, although we don't want them to, but we understand that it does happen. And I've spoken previously how we come from tribes, so it's not unusual for people to want to be a part of a tribe. But of course, what they do in that tribe is what we are concerned about. But anyway, so back to Footprints. I developed that company myself. Obviously went through a recession in 2010 due to what happened in society. So people weren't very much interested in counselling, so I had to go and do other stuff. But I think 5-6 years ago, I thought, go back to this. You've got a passion for it. You love what you do, and you like to help people move from point A to point B. So that's exactly what I do. And so far, so good. So today, I would like to talk about trauma and introduce people to what trauma does, how it works, the spin-offs from it. Some things people will already know, but some things people won't know. And with Rosie and Val, I've broken it down into a simpler, sort of easy to digest way of taking it on board. So the subject of trauma is a huge one. I'm going to try and cover it in a very brief way. I'm going to use simple terms for a very complex subject. It is a complex subject, and no two people feel anything the same way about any particular situation, and trauma is no different from that. So we're going to try to look at it together. I'm going to talk about trauma and the effects of trauma with simple descriptions that are based on theory that's been researched. Most people have experienced trauma themselves from a personal experience, or that of they've noticed somebody else has gone through something and it's going to affect them. Second-hand trauma, we could call that. A friend's been hurt, or you've directly seen a family member hurt, or it's happened, or you've even witnessed something traumatic on TV, like what we're watching at the moment, watching Gaza and Jerusalem. It affects us because we're humans. We don't want to see other people being hurt. It's innate for us not to want to see anybody else be hurt. So experiencing trauma is a distressing event, such as seeing somebody die, thinking you're going to die yourself, or being seriously injured, or experiencing sexual violence. It can happen to the person themselves, as I've said, or it can happen to people that you see. Now, there are three main types of trauma. It's called acute. That can come from a single incident where just something happens to you. It can, like, for example, like a car accident, a car crash. You could be involved in a very serious car crash where somebody loses their life. That could be an acute experience of trauma. Chronic is repeated, prolonged incidents, such as domestic violence. We know what domestic violence is. It goes both ways, but that obviously goes on over time, and the people that are impacted, that would become under a chronic form of trauma. The complex version, which is a varied multiple traumatic events that are personal and invasive. What would that mean? That would mean that It happens to you personally. Again, it could be something like domestic violence. And it's invasive, as in it keeps going on and it keeps getting into your psyche. So you find it very, very, very difficult to deal with. Now, first reactions can be confusion, sadness, exhaustion, anxiety, agitation, numbness, spacing out, feeling weird, or over alertness. Different people have different reactions. There's no right way or there's no wrong way to feel or respond. It's called trauma. It's traumatic for a reason. Everyone will act differently, so don't judge your own reactions or that of other people. Now let's take a little pause here to gather our thoughts, feelings, and digest what I've just opened the door on. And we'll come back, and there can be some questions from the audience online or in the room. Over to Rosie.
Yeah, in this moment of pause, perhaps a particular experience has come to mind or a particular person has come to mind. Spend a minute or so with it, but with acceptance of yourself and others, that there's no right or wrong way to react. And take us on, Yinka. On to our next bit. Is that all right?
Okay, yeah, I don't know when you're ready. Traumatic events affect us physically, affects our brains and our bodies. It impacts our brains and our bodies, basically. So how could I describe that? So like if you hear, I don't know, if I started screaming and shouting and going on really crazy, you're going to hear it, but you're going to feel unnerved in your stomach. So that's the physical effects from something that you hear. Trauma is similar. It's going to affect you mentally, and of course, it's going to affect you physically. That's what I'm trying to describe there. It can have long-lasting effects for some, and for others, it can be short-lived over a 12-week period. It may pass away. Some people, the effects may reduce following weeks or months, but for some people, as I've said, it may have lasting severe effects that will lead to medical diagnosis of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Here are some of the things that you might experience. Number one, intense emotions, moodiness, trauma can lead for people trying to cope by using smoking, drinking, or like-minded vices. While this can be effective in the short term, they only numb the emotions and the pain that you're really going through. And those emotions and pain will not dissipate by taking drugs, eating, over-sexualizing yourself, or spending money crazily. You'll still feel bad. But from prolonging the impact on the body and the mind, we never learn how to deal with the underlying emotions effectively. This can lead to long-term health effects and heart disease or depression. Now, when we're suppressing our emotions, a lot of people don't realize that our emotions, our immune system, our cognitive behavioral system, they're all one. They don't affect each other, they're one. So when one part of it is out of sync, other parts of it are out of sync. And this can lead to, well, diseases, because if your immune system is not doing what it's supposed to do, when cancer cells form, they will not attack them. That's what they're designed to do, to protect you. So if you put any of that out of sync, you're really opening yourself up to sorts of all manners of diseases. 2, reliving the trauma. This may be through distressing memories of the area. So if something happened in the shopping centre, you may find it very difficult to go into shopping centres in the future. If it happened on a bus, same thing. People's expressions, flashbacks, nightmares, emotional detachment, avoidance of places, activities, they are reminders, or what we could call triggers. They could set you back. You go into a circumstance and all of a sudden it triggers you and you're back to that same day you heard the bad news. So that sort of thing can happen. noises, smells, facial expressions, gestures, and certain types of places, hospitals, narrow hallways, etc., can just be the triggers that set you back to the first day you experience your trauma. 3, how we see the world. We can start to believe the world around us is an unsafe place because something happened to disturb our sanctity. We're no longer happy. We're no longer contented. Something has impacted us. So you could look at it as if a meteorite hitting the earth, it leaves a crater. That crater is your emotions and how you'll be feeling. And it takes a lot of work to change how you feel about that, or again, a stone going into a pond, the ripple effect. 4, ways of being alert and unsafe. We find it very difficult to relax after this, to concentrate, and we start to feel jumpy. Okay. And we might start to be easily irritated or angry. Basically, our personality could change. Rosie's got a graph that she's going to show us that shows you how trauma affects different people and different trajectories that you can go on. So there's a chronic one, which is at the top. And as you can see, if you can see it, as something has happened to you, you stay on that chronic level all the time, and that up to 2-year period. And I would actually go as far as to say, if it's bereavement, you've lost somebody, then bereavement is a lifetime thing. Then you've got what I would call the recovery mode, the delayed mode, which is obviously delayed. So like immediately, it doesn't really kick in. So it takes time. And then by maybe a 2-year period, you get a peak where you're really feeling a lot of anxiety, lots of traumatic effects. Then you've got the moderate, which, it's a very, as it's self-explanatory, it starts off pretty high over the first year, and over the second year, it starts to go down. And some people are resilient, so it's mild from the time of the impact of the event, and for some reason, these people don't really get very much affected by what's happened to them. So let's take a second break, brief pause, because more of your experiences would have come to mind now, and it's challenging to accept them. It might be digging up things for you that are not comfortable to deal with. So we're going to take a few minutes break. The response to trauma is long, and prolonged. It's diagnosed as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So what are the best treatments? Again, we was kind of alluding to a little bit of this just now. Trauma therapy is the first treatment for dealing with PTSD. Specifically, cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure therapy are evidence-based treatments to help individuals reduce traumatic symptoms. Research has shown that both of these treatments are significantly help reduce trauma effects. But you have to pay for those, and not everybody can afford it, so it's not really... First, you have to get diagnosed, so that takes time, once you've got a diagnosis, and then you have to find a therapist that specializes in this, and they probably won't be cheap. But if you get through all of that, the research is saying that after a 12-week period, you will find some relief for some people, not everybody, but that's a hope. But the evidence-based treatments, as they are useful, sometimes the more specific treatments is a relationship with a trusted friend, similar to what you were saying. Somebody that you can listen to you and not judge you, but just listen, really listen. And that provider can make a big difference, especially in a world where after you've had a traumatic effect, or event, should I say, you don't trust people. Why would you trust people? Your trust has been robbed from you. So if you can find somebody you can trust, then that's helping you to reinvent your trust with fellow human beings. So somebody who can listen to you is very, 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 very powerful in this time, and can help you to be stable. So this could be a therapist who slowly helps you to shift towards change, the way you're thinking, or as I say, it could be a good friend, or if you're of a religious faith, it could be your imam, it could be your pastor, it could be your rabbi. All of these people are very useful in these kind of circumstances because they do listen. They're trained to listen. Right. So along that, specific as what I've discussed here, you consider daily treatments for yourself. It's called mindfulness. Now, when a lot of people hear about mindfulness, they just think, oh, meditation and saying and and things like that. Well, nowadays, we've got lovely apps. And some of these apps are called, I'm going to run through them. One is called Calm, Insight Timer, Headspace, Breathe. They all guide you through mindfulness meditations, and it takes you into a place where your body and your mind become one, as they are anyway, but you train yourself to do it. And the more you practice this, the better you get at it, like anything. And of course, that leads you to be, in sync with yourself, and anything that's going on, you deal with it better, including trauma. So that's the reason why those are educated suggestions. So I'm going to take a pause here again.
But I just want to point you towards a couple of things, because this might be in the questions, and to get. Yinka is happy to be contacted personally. I will put, here's his website is named there. I will also put that in the chat, and his telephone number in the chat. So that's one possibility if you wanted to follow something up, if something is staying with you and you want to have the opportunity to have a chat with someone to see what you might need. And we'll put a link to that on RTK's website as well. Or if this is all a bit new to you, or you need a bit more space with it, or you need something kind of a bit more one step removed, Mind website has a section specifically about trauma that goes through this kind of one step at a time with helpful descriptions and lots of suggestions on there for finding extra support. And we know that's difficult. It's not an easy, straightforward one, but there are lots of options there. So if you need kind of somewhere to go to have another look at it, then there's a link to that on our resources page on the website. We've got kind of a whole long list on the resources bit, and that's in there. I've put that nearer the top there if you want to go to there and look up that a bit more.